Episode 212, Resources and Heresy. This is the World Organic News for the week ending 4th of May 2020. John Moore reporting. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Back in 2007-8, when the financial crisis hit government funding in the US, yes, and everywhere else too, but this is a US story for the moment. So the US cut funding to NCAT, which is a National Centre for Agricultural Technology, possibly. Not that it matters. And especially to their ATRA program, which I think stands for Appropriate Technology Transfer for Rural America, or something like that. I'd use that site for years as a resource for sustainable ag articles, ideas and techniques. Anyway, their funding was chopped about and they started charging a couple of dollars for each PDF download. Now, the other day at work, I thought I remembered a resource on organic asparagus I needed to look up. So a quick Google wang had me back there at their site. Now, at the current COVID hoo-ha, NCAT has waived their fees. That's right. In another crisis, they've now removed the fees. So their PDFs are now gratis. And they cover a huge range of topics, from starting an agricultural enterprise through to specific pests and diseases. Now, the pests and diseases aren't naturally enough US specific, but many of us face similar, if not the same pests and diseases, so no matter where we live, there'll be something there we can have a look at. I would recommend a really deep dive into this site. There's links in the show notes, of course. And now to the heresy I was talking about in the title. As you know, the World Organic News is dedicated to the best ways to decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil. And the very best way I've discovered to achieve the latter aim is by no-dig gardening and no-till cropping. Equally, long-term listeners will know of my deep affection for and adherence to the philosophy and practices of Masanobu Fukuoka. So here comes the heresy. Fukuoka began his grain rotations from a ploughed rice paddy. He may never have ploughed them again, but he began with ploughed paddies. So what I hear you say? Well, in this interesting time, living through what appears to be a black swan event, but one that's been predicted for at least 100 years, we have large numbers of individuals and families looking to start their gardening adventures. And in much the same way as the hippies, in inverted commas, of the Back to the Land movement, went back to double digging gardens because that's what their grandparents did, many people have started digging for COVID victory gardens, and by that I mean digging. I received a message on the World Organic News Facebook page, link in the show notes, where I'm giving away my how-to no-dig gardening book. The message said something like this: "This book is too late for me, I've already dug my garden." To which I replied, "No dramas, you can move over to no-dig as you harvest each crop through the season." We have a chance, listeners, to change the world for the better. I know of several gardens dug over the past month which will be transformed to no-dig by next summer. Sometimes it is easier to dig than to bring together materials to build a no-dig, and people are frightened at the moment, so they fall back on what they believe to be certainties. Now, of course, anyone who's practiced no-dig methods know they are superior. Less work, less stress, more harvests. But here we bump up against the inertia of established systems. With this inertia comes the fear of peers judging. I read of a no-dig gardener who grows in an allotment, has been doing so for 5 years. And every year she's taken aside by wiser, in inverted commas, and more experienced, in inverted commas, growers, who point out that she is wasting space and productivity by putting pathways through her space and not touching the growing areas with a shovel. At the end of each season, she still produces more food, but the efficiency infection has reached as far down the culture as the allotment. The evidence is clear, the workload is less, the output is greater. Yet there are none so blind as those who will not see. This is the way you have to garden, so this is the way I will garden. It's sad, but it's how we avoid change through most of culture and societies. So how we overcome this by means other than example is beyond me. If you've got any thoughts, drop me an email, podcast@worldorganicnews.com, or jump over to the website and leave a comment at the bottom of the accompanying transcript for this episode. Now, this is a problem at the agricultural level too. No-till, regeneratively grazed properties stand as islands amongst more conventional growers in each district. The fear of looking stupid by following green or alternative production methods, both of those in inverted commas, seems to be greater than the evidence of people's eyes. In episode 117, link in the show notes, Mark Rathbone discussed using biodynamic methods for first animal production in his father's time and now vegetable production in his, how the soil became healthy and deep, and yet he is an island in a sea of chemical producers. There is hope in this time as new people come to see the advantages of growing for themselves. If we can just convince them early enough that no dig is even easier, the message will spread. I found a picture on Facebook the other day, and I've added that to the show notes over at World Organic News too, worldorganicnews.com as well. If you just look for the show notes for episode 212, you'll find it. But I'll run through it here. It's fairly straightforward. The pic shows the difference between 4 food production methods going from paddock to plate. And these 4 systems are the home garden, the farmer's market, the supermarket, and the food delivery service. And I'll take these in reverse order. Food delivery services have 6 steps to get the food from the paddock to the plate, going a little bit like this. From the farm through transport to a distribution centre, into packaging, and then out for delivery through more transport and then to the plate. At each step of this process, a bottleneck, say a plant closure due to a viral infection, causes the system to back up and the plate to remain empty. If we add in the greenhouse gases associated with just transport, there's an awful lot of downsides to the consumer convenience of eating without having to cook much. In the supermarket model, it's a little bit shorter, but not by much. So instead of 6 steps, there's 5. So farm is where the food originates. It's then transported to packaging and distribution, then transported again to the supermarket, and then taken to the plate. Some cooking may be required, but not necessarily so, given all the instant meals that are sold in supermarkets. So instead of having food delivered directly to the home, the consumer has to drive to and from the supermarket. All the disadvantages, supply bottleneck-wise and greenhouse gases, still apply to this model. The farmer's market, surprisingly, was not that much better. It is in that there's less distances involved, but there's still a lot of steps. And the biggest difference being the total amount of transport involved. And food tends not to be shipped across continents to farmers' markets, but derived locally. So an improvement. The steps involved are farm, transport to market, market to plate, but to get the food from the market to the plate, people have to travel from their homes to the market. Now, not surprisingly, the simplest system is the home garden, where the food goes from the garden to the plate. It never ceases to amaze me how you can have food within 20 yards of your dinner table. I still find it gobsmacking, and it's delicious. Now, I understand it's not possible in all locations to grow everything you want to consume. Tea and coffee are difficult in temperate regions, and as John Seymour said, we can live without these, but would we want to? Realising we'll never probably be self-sufficient means we can focus on those things we can grow, and no matter where we live, we can grow something. Let's shorten our supply lines, feed ourselves, our neighbours and communities. We may not overgrow the system, but we can create a viable alternative. So as I've mentioned for the last few episodes, there's a link to a Udemy course in the show notes entitled Growing a No-Dig Garden, if you'd like some more formal assistance in your gardening. You can also go and have a look at or send people to episode 207, where I discuss a quick response garden to get yours happening swiftly. And remember, in this unusual time, if we put in the groundwork now, we can all decarbonise the air and recarbonise the soil. Thank you for listening, and I'll be back next week.